Late round quarterbacks can be the key to success in fantasy football, opening the door to more skilled players who you can load up on early in the draft. This isn't to say that grabbing Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes early is a mistake, but more so that finding value at a very deep quarterback position late in the draft can pay huge dividends. And we aren't talking about the back half of the top 12 quarterbacks either. These are players you're drafting at or close to their floor, presenting virtually no risk but ample upside if all the stars align. I'm Dave Loughran with Awesemo.com, counting down the top 5 under-the-radar quarterbacks to keep on your radar heading into your 2021 drafts. But before we start, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, and let's dive into it. Sam Darnold finished the 2020 season with a league-worst passing grade among all players with at least 300 dropbacks, according to Pro Football Focus, and was one of only 2 quarterbacks to throw more interceptions than touchdowns. Cam Newton was the other one. So it should come as no surprise to anyone that Darnold also had the worst passer rating and 3rd lowest yards per attempt on the year. The truth is, Darnold's 3-year stay in New York can be described as nothing other than an abject failure. And to be fair, Darnold did have the highest pressure rate of any starting quarterback, and the Jets' offensive line ranked 31st in pass blocking, but still, it was really, really bad. It's anyone's guess as to what's going to happen with Darnold in Carolina, but here's what we do know. The Panthers had 4 players eclipse 1,000 yards from scrimmage last season, despite having one of the most conservative quarterbacks under center in Teddy Bridgewater. They also had 3 receivers finishing top 25 in fantasy points at their position. Being freed from the grip of Adam Gase and into the welcoming arms of Matt Rule is an objectively good thing, though, as Darnold couldn't have fallen into a more favorable offensive situation. This is what we can conclude about Darnold. He's a late-round backup with upside and by far the best arsenal of weapons he's ever played with, including a legitimate wide receiver 1 and a generational multi-purpose running back in Christian McCaffrey. If he still sucks, his pass catchers are going to take a hit too. But if he shows market improvement, Darnold can become an excellent late-round best ball stacking option with the likes of DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Terrace Marshall. Ultimately, you aren't wasting much draft capital drafting Darnold anyway, so a miss here isn't the end of the world. Carson Wentz wasn't much better than Sam Darnold in 2020, but he at least had some legitimate excuses. The Eagles lost starting left tackle Andre Dillard and right guard Brandon Brooks before the season started. Pro Bowl right tackle Lane Johnson, when active, played injured, and Jason Peters was totally washed. The Eagles' leading receiver was former 6th-round draft pick Travis Fulgham, and no quarterback suffered more from a higher drop rate than Wentz, whose pass catchers dropped nearly 11% of his passes. Granted, no quarterback threw more interceptions than Wentz, and he only started 12 games, while only 2 quarterbacks committed more fumbles than the former Eagles signal caller. Some of this can be attributed to a porous line, a barren wasteland of pass catchers, and a highly questionable play caller in Doug Peterson. But Wentz still finished with the league's 2nd lowest adjusted completion percentage and passer rating in 2020. Enter Frank Reich, who helped lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl in 2018, and already has a relationship with Wentz. The Colts will have a far more balanced offense than the Eagles, a top-ranked offensive line, and a coach who has already gotten the most out of Wentz. My only concern here is whether or not Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell will be difference makers this season, and if T.Y. Hilton still has gas in the tank. If so, Wentz could potentially step out of the grave and move one step closer to his 2017 form. You can still draft Wentz well outside of the top 12 at his position, but I really like the idea of targeting him in best ball tournaments where you'll be getting a considerable discount on the entire offensive stack. Baker Mayfield showed marked improvements in his first year under head coach Kevin Stefanski and should be expected to take another leap forward in 2021. Let's not forget that while Baker Mayfield's QB 15 finish was nothing to write home about last year, he played in biblical-type rains and winds for 3 straight weeks, only had Odell Beckham Jr. for 7 games, and experienced a highly unusual offseason in his first year with Stefanski thanks to the pandemic. Mayfield cut his interceptions from 21 to 8 and improved his touchdown tally from 22 to 26, but attempted fewer passes and threw for fewer yards thanks to a run-heavy approach in Cleveland. But there's reason to believe Stefanski will want to put more responsibility on Mayfield in their 2nd season together. And it helps to know that Cleveland ranked number 1 in pass blocking, and Mayfield saw pressure on only 26.4% of his dropbacks last year. Drafting Mayfield just inside of the QB 20 range feels like a steal right now, especially considering he'll have no shortage of weapons at his disposal this season, including a healthy Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, and Kareem Hunt out of the backfield. Tua Tagovailoa was the second best quarterback on his own team last year. We'll hit on that in a minute. But he'll have a real opportunity to put an underwhelming rookie campaign in the rear view heading into year 2. Few quarterbacks will have the embarrassment of riches that Tagovailoa will have this year, with the additions of Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle, who join incumbent starters Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki to form what should be a very promising offense. Tagovailoa's passing volume was concerning as a rookie, attempting 28 or fewer passes in 6 of 10 starts. But another year in the NFL, a massive overhaul to his offensive weapons, an offseason that shouldn't be nearly as affected by COVID-19, and being one more year removed from a hip injury puts the young quarterback in a position to silence all of the doubters. As a matter of fact, Tagovailoa just shared recently that his hip feels 10 times better than it did during the 2020 season. You can grab him in the same neighborhood as Mayfield and hope for that breakout season that everyone has seemingly already dismissed after half a season of football last year. Before we get to our number 1 under-the-radar quarterback for 2021, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for everything fantasy football and DFS. As your honorable mention, it wouldn't be a proper quarterback video if we didn't talk about, yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick. The 38-year-old gunslinger, appropriately referred to as Fitzmagic, never ceases to produce when given the opportunity, and last season was no different. Brian Flores decided to replace Fitzpatrick with rookie Tua Tagovailoa midway through the season, but in weeks 1 through 6 as the Dolphins starter, the journeyman was the QB 11, and if you remove a dreadful week 1 start against the Patriots, he was the QB 7 weeks 2 through 6. Actually, in 2019 as a starter from weeks 7 through 17, Fitzpatrick was the QB 2 among all starters in the league. If he wins the starting job in Washington, Fitzpatrick will have the weapons and the aggressive mentality to once again be a starting level quarterback in all formats. And it won't hurt to have a handful of playmakers in Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and others at his disposal. If you're drafting Justin Fields as your backup, expect him to be your starter sooner or later. The only reason Fields isn't being drafted as a top 12 quarterback right now is because Andy Dalton presumably stands in his way. Although there's no guarantee Dalton starts in week 1 anyway, despite his 1-year, $10 million contract, and even if he does, Fields could supplant him very early on. The uncertainty surrounding the Bears' starting quarterback role creates a great buying opportunity on Fields, who threw for 63 touchdowns and rushed for another 15 through only 22 games at Ohio State, while completing close to 70% of his passes. If you watched our top rookie quarterbacks to target in 2021 video, you already know Justin Fields has the rushing upside to become a fantasy football cheat code, but he also has the arm and accuracy to win fantasy championships. If I'm drafting Fields as a backup, I'll also be taking my starting quarterback later in the draft because the expectation here is that they'll just be a holdover until Fields has the starting job, which shouldn't take very long. Even if I'm wrong, this is a risk worth taking. Jalen Hurts won championships last season, and Lamar Jackson did the same when he replaced Joe Flacco mid-season a few years back. Fields has the ability to do the same in 2021, and he won't be someone you can just pluck off the waiver. Thanks for watching, and be sure to head to Awesemo.com for all of your fantasy football needs. We'll see you back here for the next one.